Have you ever heard of a king who reigned for just 93 days? Not in some ancient, forgotten kingdom, but the mighty Ottoman Empire, one of the most powerful states of its time. This isn't a myth, it's the incredible and tragic story of Sultan Murad V. His brief time on the throne is one of history's great what-ifs, a fleeting moment when the empire almost took a completely different path. So how did this happen? How did a man groomed his entire life to rule become a footnote in history? Let's dive into the dramatic rise and swift fall of the shortest reigning sultan in Ottoman history. To understand Murad, we first need to understand his uncle, Sultan. By the 1870s, the Ottoman Empire was in deep trouble. It was drowning in debt, facing rebellions in the Balkans, and under immense pressure from European powers. The public was growing restless. Was an autocrat resistant to the kind of modern constitutional reforms that a growing number of intellectuals and statesmen believed were necessary to save the empire. These reformers, known as the Young Ottomans, saw a glimmer of hope not in the current sultan, but in his nephew, Crown Prince Murad. Murad was a completely different kind of royal. He was born in 1840, the eldest son of Sultan the first, a ruler known for his own reformist tendencies. From a young age, Murad received a stellar education. Unlike many of his predecessors, he was fluent in French, a passionate lover of European classical music, and an accomplished pianist and composer himself. He read widely, devouring the works of European political thinkers. He secretly corresponded with figures like Namk Kemal and Zia Pasha, the leading minds of the young Ottoman movement. They saw him as their great hope, a modern, liberal, and intelligent prince who shared their vision for a constitutional monarchy, a system where the sultan's absolute power would be limited by a parliament and a written constitution. This made him a threat. His uncle, Sultan, was deeply suspicious of him. For years, Murad was kept under close watch, essentially a prisoner in his own palace. He lived in constant fear for his life, worried that his uncle might break with tradition and have him killed to secure the throne for his own son. This prolonged state of anxiety and confinement took a severe toll on his mental and emotional health. He began to drink heavily to cope with the stress, a habit that would have devastating consequences. The pressure was immense, building up day by day, year after year, inside the gilded cage of the Dalmabahi Palace. Then, in May 1876, everything changed. The political situation reached a breaking point. The reformist ministers, led by the powerful Midhat Pasha, had had enough of his misrule in a swift and bloodless coup d'etat. On May 30th, they deposed the Sultan. Soldiers surrounded the palace and was forced to abdicate. The conspirators immediately went to Murad, woke him from his sleep, and proclaimed him the new Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. He was now Murad V. Imagine the scene. After decades of living in fear and obscurity, Murad was suddenly thrust onto the throne. It should have been a moment of triumph, the culmination of all his and the reformers' dreams. Initially, there was immense optimism. The public in Istanbul celebrated. The young Ottomans were ecstatic. They believed the dawn of a new, liberal era had arrived. Murad immediately began signaling his intent to rule differently. He started releasing political prisoners, showed favor to the reformist ministers, and most importantly, he began working with them on drafting the empire's first ever constitution. It seemed like the revolution had succeeded. The plan was to transform the 600-year-old absolute monarchy into a modern constitutional state, much like Britain. But the years of paranoia, fear, and heavy drinking had shattered Murad's nerves. The immense pressure of becoming sultan, coupled with the shocking events of the coup, proved to be too much. Just a few days after his accession, the former sultan was found dead. The official report said it was suicide, but rumors of assassination spread like wildfire. This news completely broke Murad. He had a severe nervous breakdown. He became withdrawn, paranoid, and erratic. Eyewitness accounts from the time describe a man who was deeply unwell, sometimes lapsing into incoherence, other times seized by fits of terror. He was unable to perform even the most basic ceremonial duties of a sultan. He couldn't deliver the traditional speech at his accession ceremony. The man who was supposed to be the symbol of a new era was mentally collapsing. The government ministers were in a state of panic. Their chosen champion for reform was psychologically incapacitated. They tried everything to help him. They brought in doctors, including a specialist from Vienna, but his condition didn't improve. For 3 months they tried to hide the truth from the public, hoping he would recover. They ruled in his name, pushing forward with the constitutional project. But it was an impossible situation. The empire needed a leader, a functioning head of state. How could you introduce a new system of government when the monarch himself was unable to even read the proclamation? The powerful minister Midhat Pasha was faced with a heartbreaking choice. He had to choose between his loyalty to the man he had put on the throne and his commitment to the cause of reform itself. With a heavy heart, he and the other ministers made a painful decision. They concluded that Murad was unfit to rule. They needed a new sultan who could ratify the constitution they had worked so hard to create. Their eyes turned to Murad's younger half-brother, Abdul Hamid. Abdul Hamid was a shrewd and cautious prince. He watched the drama unfold carefully. The ministers approached him and made a deal. If he promised to proclaim the constitution, they would make him sultan. Abdul Hamid agreed. And so, on August 31st, 1876, after a reign of just 93 days, Murad V was deposed on the grounds of mental illness. The official religious decree cited his insanity, making it the first time in centuries that a sultan was removed for health reasons rather than through violence or rebellion. Murad was confined to the Ron Palace, a beautiful but isolated residence on the Bosphorus. He would spend the next 28 years there as a prisoner, completely cut off from the outside world. Interestingly, historical accounts suggest that after being removed from the pressures of the throne, his mental health actually improved significantly. He lived a quiet life, reading, composing music, and watching from his window as the empire he was meant to lead moved on without him. He outlived his own brother, dying in 1904, a forgotten figure locked away in a palace. Meanwhile, his brother, Sultan Abdul Hamid II, kept his promise, at least initially, in December 1876, he promulgated the Ottoman Empire's first constitution, ushering in what is known as the First Constitutional Era. It seemed Murad's dream had been realized just under a different ruler. But the story has another twist. Less than 2 years later, using a war with Russia as a pretext, Abdul Hamid suspended the constitution and dissolved the parliament. He would go on to rule as an absolute monarch for the next 30 years. The brief, liberal reign of Murad V remains a poignant chapter in history. It was a fleeting moment when the Ottoman Empire stood at a crossroads. Could a liberal, Western-educated sultan have saved the empire by transforming it into a constitutional monarchy? Or was the empire's decline inevitable? We'll never know. Murad's story is a personal tragedy of a man broken by the very system he was born to lead. It's also a political tragedy for the empire, a story of a missed opportunity, a liberal dream that flickered for just 93 days before being extinguished for decades. Thank you for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the forgotten corners of history. See you next time.